Hey, everybody, welcome to the Amputate to Amplify podcast, where transformation always takes center stage. I'm your host, John Register, a two-time Olympic Trials Combat Army veteran, amputee, Paralympic silver medalist, and certified professional speaker. Join me as we dive deep into the lives of senior C-suite leaders and inspirational influencers who've turned adversities into their advantage and obstacles into opportunities. We look to amputate our limitation and amplify our expectations and uncover the raw, real stories behind the corporate facade. We're talking about challenges, pitfalls, and most importantly, the victorious turnarounds that define true leadership. Prepare to be inspired to act, as these leaders just don't overcome obstacles, they transform them into triumphs. So let's amputate and amplify right here, right now. All right, we have to introduce you to our guest. What an amazing man. I had a chance to meet with him in London. Cheerio, great across the pond for us over here in the west of America. And he has spent most of his time working life in the events industry, from writing and delivering training and product demonstrations at events for macro media through the internet boom to design, coding, and selling interactive keypad voter systems. We could probably use them in the United States right now as we're coming up on our voting stuff. So making sure our voting systems are good, used in meetings and conferences globally. For the last 10 years, he has been involved in identifying the most interesting, entertaining, and motivating speakers for his clients around the world. He has 3 children, has helped bottle feed and walk wolves, and built a £1 million eco house in the woods and navigated the United Kingdom's canal network on his narrowboat. He has a narrowboat as opposed to a wide boat, I guess. His interests include personal development, supporting Blink mental health and various festivals, functional fitness, and helping teach people about achieving financial independence with Rebel Finance. Please welcome the amazing, the one and only from the London Speakers Bureau, Agent 006, Dominic Eldred-Earl. Thanks, Dominic, for being on.
Thank you very much for inviting me. And I kind of feel I got quite a lot to live up to now after the introduction to your podcast and B, the introduction that you had for me there. So let's get into it, really.
Oh, love to. Dominic, I always begin our podcast with a very simple question that tends to take us in a lot of different directions. So you're writing a book, mythical book. It's a mythical book. It's entitled "The Meeting Professional's Anarchist Guide to How to Destroy Your Next Event." What might be one of your chapter titles?
I actually came up with 2.
Great.
One which I only thought of this afternoon, based on my terrible performance at turning up on time. So that would be one of them. Ignore your timings. But the original one that I thought of is go out when you're planning your meeting with the worst brief possible. Have no idea what it is you want to achieve.
Wow. So have you seen that happen? What's the story behind
that? Yes. I've had briefs of many types over the years. Ones where we don't know what date we want to have it. We don't know what budget we've got. We don't know what message we want to put across, and all those sorts of things. So yeah, it can be a bit of a struggle at times trying to actually put forward the right sort of speakers for clients. They're just like, well, we're going to hold an event. We need a speaker. Other than that, we have no clue. So they can be challenging. They can also be very rewarding, to be fair, when you actually do manage to find the right speaker. So it's a matter of gently pursuing it.
So if you were talking about in this title, we're talking about amputate to amplify. You say of amputating, coming up with the worst brief possible, no dates, no message, no budget, or don't know them. When you look at amplifying, right? So the antithesis of that, what is it that you have seen that works well outside of just being well prepared, But what are some
Yep.
of the examples that you have seen that, for maybe myself as a professional speaker, or you see the production crew, or you see those in the supply chain of the group giving or delivering the event for the client?
Mhm. I would say the key, really the main key thing is the ability to listen.
Hmm.
Um, by the person putting the event together, to listen to their event sponsor or the end client, who is, listen to their audience as to what it is, what sort of things the audience want to hear about. Listen to, if it's within an organization, listen to the feelings and the atmosphere within the organization, so that you have that level of empathy to what it is that is actually required.
Empathy is something that I think when I talk with leaders, I was the Amputee Coalition's acting CEO for about 7 months as we're riding the ship, so to speak. And what I found was I had a lot of staff that had really kind of been gutted. I don't know if the were gutted is the right word. They had we had gone from 28 full time uh, positions down to 14. And so they really didn't feel as if they were listened to, and certainly didn't feel that anybody was empathetic to them. And so the first thing I did, to your um, uh, level, what you just shared with us, is become empathetic to where they were in the moment, and then really listen to what might get us out, because I certainly didn't know how to get us out of it. So it's going to be those people that were around me that knew way more than I knew as the executive, on how we could actually move forward and move the organization and lift the organization up. So you've been in this space for quite a while, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of things. But how did you get into this space of being with the London Speakers Bureau? I know that was my
Ah,
worst half English and Australian accents.
yes, the London Speakers Bureau. Yes, absolutely. Top job, old man.
Job.
Uh, how did
Job.
I get into it? Well, it's primarily down to one person, and that's my ex-wife.
Hmm.
She'd come back from Spain, where she'd been for a number of years, did various jobs that she hadn't really enjoyed, and then one day saw an advert in a newspaper for a sales position that wanted somebody with Spanish, and she's fluent in Spanish, so she applied for it, not really knowing what it was, and it turned out to be her entry into the speakers world. And then we got together several years later. I was still doing some other jobs, which turned out to be not as flexible as they were supposed to be. And so when our little one was born, she suggested, well, why? Well, I had previously been doing some of the logistics for her on her speaker work, and she said, well, why don't you just come and start booking speakers as well? So that was kind of how I got into it.
That's amazing. I'm fascinated by the bureau world, the agents world, and the speakers that are filling positions for the end client. Um, I've been doing this now for 5 years full time, and since about 2012, I would say 2012, as kind of ad hoc-ish, but really understanding, like you're saying, listening and giving to the end client, and how people find their way into this profession of speaking. When you look at because you have done a little bit, you look at innovation and adaptation. With your background in the industry, from micromedia to London Speakers Bureau, how have you seen the demand for technology and innovation evolve? I mean, we're in a market now where AI is coming to, we think is going to rule and take over, and bots are going to be speaking for all of us. How does how does innovation play a role?
I think I can pretty solidly say that isn't going to happen. uh, I through obviously with the roles that I fill within the speaking sort of sector, a lot of what I deal with is future. So future tech, future of work, future of humanity, future of geopolitics, all those sorts of things. And the one common thread that goes through everything is that technology will not replace the human interaction. And I hate to go back to it. Are we still allowed to mention the C word? Um,
Yeah, for sure.
that
Because I don't
dreaded
think we're
time that
I
was
don't think we're
COVID.
out of it. I don't think we're out of it.
We're not. It's well, I mean, COVID is now what I believe is called endemic. So it's
Yeah.
like
Hmm.
flu. We're just gonna, live with it, and until we come to the next pandemic, which might not be quite as far off as people would like to think. But
Right.
that's another story.
Another story.
Another story. But I mean, I suppose that was another example of amputate to amplify, because I mean we hit February March 2020, wasn't it?
Yes.
And I looked at my year of events, which was reasonably well booked up, in the period of 2 weeks went down to nothing.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that sort of pivotal point. I mean, there was pretty much 6 months really of very few meetings requiring speakers. And then
Right.
after about 9 months, it started to pick up. And, within 12 months 12 months onwards, having speakers online giving presentations was a common thing. So that sort of pivot to using the technology to do the presentations was great to a point. However, now that we have come back to a world where we can move around, where we can get together, it is very much that we are back to that, back to meeting in person. I mean, it's probably 25% of meetings are still virtual that I deal with. Probably another 25% of meetings that I deal with are hybrid now. So there will be a smaller group of people in the room and people remotely. And then probably 50% are just solely in person. The interesting thing I am seeing though is that they are asking for a definite reason for it to be in person. It has to be something that could not just be done over whatever your video platform is. Don't want to mention any in particular, but there's many out there now.
Yeah, that's interesting that you're finding that people are being more intentional about the meetings space. When you're looking at that from the client's perspective and delivering and setting up, how do you what's your process by finding a person? Maybe it's a two-part question on, you know, you identify talent, but at the same time you want to make sure that talent aligns with the client and vice versa. You want to ask enough questions so that you know the talent that's going to come. How do you curate the talent for your client?
That can be tricky at times, especially if you have the occasional client who comes to you and says, I want this person. Uh,
Mm,
and especially if you know that that person actually won't meet the goals that they're trying to achieve.
mm.
So you have to do a subtle bit of steering sometimes. But in terms of actually knowing who will be good for an event, wherever possible, I do try and meet up with people physically in person. I do try and get out to events to see them presenting, see how they interact both on stage, how they engage with the audience, and also how they engage with the client when they're off the stage. All of those are very important factors.
Have you done so in the virtual space? The reason I asked the question is, as you mentioned, during the pandemic, we had a lot of dates that kind of flew off the calendar, and then slowly, 6 months to 8, 9 months, maybe a year, things started coming back. One of the things that I did was I began hosting speaker showcases for myself and inviting some bureaus or other event planners to come in. And if they brought their clients in, then they could, make revenue off of that, booking with the special code. Did you ever go out to see like who's really starting to shift? There's a very specific person I looked at. I won't go into it right now. I may say it later. Who I looked at to see was making the shift, and I thought was doing it very well. Um, but have you looked at it from not just going out to see a person speak in person, but also virtually?
Absolutely, absolutely. As I say, the virtual environment is still an important platform to be able to operate on, especially when you're dealing with a global client who doesn't want to get everyone together. They want to be able to demonstrate especially if they want to demonstrate out to clients. That is where the virtual platforms really are still important. So I've run various series of LinkedIn Lives or Zoom meetings with an international tech client. And in that case, everything is done virtually because they are trying to reach clients from Europe, the US, Asia, Middle East, all those sorts of things. So, yes, knowing that somebody will be able to deliver professionally over the virtual platform is essential. And yes, I have seen speakers doing that. I do check on speakers. And in that instance, we are especially interested in speakers who have properly gone and set up their technical environment, their lighting environment, their cameras, and all of those sorts of things to be able to deliver a very almost TV studio quality sort of presentation. And there is one other thing which is
Sure.
quite a nice little, should we say, addition that some of the virtual presentations are doing. I've got probably 4 speakers that I know of who would rather pre-record the virtual event. And the reason for that is because they put together essentially what is like a small documentary. So they do a complete sort of TV style production with them recording, presenting, mixed in with the slides, mixed in with video clips and all those other things to keep it as engaging as possible. Because the thing we got to remember is that when you turn television on, when you go on your Amazon or your Netflix or whatever it is you're watching, the way stuff is designed online, TikTok, shorts, all these sorts of things, we are very bad at focusing on one thing happening on a screen for anything over about 10 to 15 seconds. That constant pace of change is something that we've been programmed into as a society through the media that we absorb. So those speakers who offer sort of a pre-recorded thing and then come on live at the end for a Q&A dressed in the same outfit in the same studio so it looks as though it's just continuing, they've really been able to nail that kind of engagement factor that resonates with people when they are watching a screen device.
Yeah, I like it. Kind of leads into what I was thinking or was going to share about the person I saw shift. And it's not a speaker. He is, but he's a comedian. He was doing the Daily Show and his name is Trevor Noah, South African gentleman, and he's doing American television, the Comedy Channel network. And I started looking around for late night talk show hosts who were shifting or pivoting really well. And he was the one that kept coming up over and over again for me that was just doing, as you said, adding a lot of value. And so I just started mimicking it. I really started taking some of the best bits that he was doing and putting them in. So in the virtual presentation, like you said, I would do. I did not do this TikTok thing. That you put another thing in my head now. But I did I would do a part of my presentation at the park, and then I would do another part of my presentation, someplace else, and then we come back live and we go into the chat box, and then we may do some breakouts and we come back. So there was something that was always shifting and fly-ins and interviews, and so the hour went by so quickly because it looked like they were watching a production.
Yeah.
And I toyed. This has been my background. I toyed with doing like a virtual background or another studio type background, And I find that people would ask questions in the chat about my painting, or what's do you really play that thing over there? So I just kept it like this because the questions were more interesting, and what people were actually looking at in the background. I didn't have a cat or a dog to run in the background or across my screen, but I found it fascinating. And when you look at that as maybe as we're shifting even now, uh, got to keep our minds focused and occupied. A lot of that has come down to what the remnants. Why I say that COVID has not left us is because the remnants of COVID really have pushed us into more of a mental health conversation. How do
Mm.
we um, kind of come out of the pandemic? I was speaking to a group of high school students, and I realized that this group for 2.5 years had never been together, and now they were graduating and they really didn't know their classmates the way that I knew my classmates, and that blip continues on with us. So when you see this in the maybe it's clients more asking for mental health, or I guess I would ask this question two ways. Number one is, have you seen more topics coming out this way to really help us with these challenges, and growth or growth mindset? And then number two, how have you seen leaders really deal with these issues when it comes to either it's booking in your world, or maybe it's another world that you work in, um, that you see leaders having to shift with their uh, either employees or clientele, to really focus in on the mental health question.
Two great points. And if I can just, if you can just indulge me for a second, I
Sure.
totally agree with what you're saying about those students. I have a 10 and a half year old son, and he missed out on 18 months of really crucial social development at school. Um, learning some of those key skills that they will need as they get older and go
Mm.
through the education system and then into real life, as it were. So yeah, it's hit young people very hard in many ways. But so yes, in terms of growth mindset and all that sort of stuff, yes, absolutely. There's been an uptake on that sort of thing from the perspective of wanting people to talk about mental health, self-care. There's been a very interesting shift in terms of the definition of resilience. So resilience used to be considered endurance, the ability to sort of push on and push through. Now resilience has been framed much more as the ability to recognize your boundaries, recognize your strengths, recognize where you need help, and to encourage asking for it and self-care and all that sort of stuff. So some very interesting topics coming around there. So I've had an increase in the number of neuroscientists that people want to bring in, various happyologists. Um,
Biologists, okay.
yeah, happyologists, sleep experts, all those sorts of things. So yes, it is a growing area. And in terms of leadership and the shift that we're seeing there, it is a drive to more empathy-based leadership. It is a drive towards actually listening to staff, understanding what they want. There's one of the speakers I work with who has indeed got a book, and one of his talks is around be more human first, or be human first. And it is demonstrable that if you engage with your staff, then your bottom line will come up. So it's not about whipping them to produce more widgets. It is about actually bringing out the carrots and tempting them along the journey with you. Because I mean, there are some scary statistics along the lines of sort of staff engagement with companies. It's estimated that anywhere up to 80% of staff are not engaged with the company they work for, and as much as 20 to 30% of staff are actively disengaged with the company, to the point that they are willing to take actions to sort of reduce productivity and to
Oh
actually
my
work
gosh.
against the company. So, so yes, we are seeing that leadership shift to try and get that engagement back, and also the challenge of managing remote teams. How you do that effectively, how you keep up levels of enthusiasm, how you keep up levels of innovation. That's one of the key things, because we did see momentarily when people moved out of the office to more home working during COVID, innovation and creativity went up for a period of about 6 months. And then it's gradually been tailing off, because those conversations you have in the kitchen or by the water cooler or as you're walking down the hallway, these random sort of sparks of inspiration trigger innovation. Now, hearing some interesting things from some of the speakers, in that they are saying it's not necessary potentially to bring your people back into the office. However, it is necessary to give them a socially rich environment. So the rise of remote workspaces where people can go to work, go to this workplace and mix with other people is really important. And it's actually increasing innovation by mixing people from different industries who have the same problems or slightly different problems, but it's triggering these new solutions and these new ideas and cross-pollinating between the different industries. So there's quite an interesting little phenomenon happening there. But at the moment, it either seems to be office or home, and we need to move to a more sort of hybrid environment. Obviously, there's the issues around trust and security and confidentiality and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
But humans are creative, so I'm sure we'll
Yeah.
find a way around it. It's not necessary potentially to bring your people back into the office. However, it is necessary to give them a socially rich environment. So the rise of remote workspaces where people can go to work, go to this workplace and mix with other people is really important. And it's actually increasing innovation by mixing people from different industries who have the same problems or slightly different problems, but it's triggering these new solutions and these new ideas and cross-pollinating between the different industries. So there's quite an interesting little phenomenon happening there. But at the moment, it either seems to be office or home, and we need to move to a more sort of hybrid environment. Obviously, there's the issues around trust and security and confidentiality and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
But humans are creative, so I'm sure we'll
Yeah.
find a way around it.
Jason Saul, he's another fascinating individual. He used to fly back and forth from Chicago to London all the time, and you reminded me of his book, The Third Way, I think it's called, or something to that effect. And he was talking the third way of doing something. So it's just not a binary solution. We
Mhm.
often will look and see if there's a binary solution for something, and it's either this way or that way. It's either up or it's down. It's either right or it's left. And there's always a third way, a fourth way, fifth way. There's always different ways to do it, and to be looking for that. So he was flying as a speaker from Chicago to London, and he didn't want to spend the money on the first class ticket because it was too much. He just didn't want to spend that much money. But he didn't want the coach class ticket either, because when he gets to London, he's tired. He's wiped out. So he goes to the ticket counter and he asks the ticket agent, "Is there any other way I can do this? I don't want to buy this ticket. I don't want to buy that ticket." And they're like, "No, there's no way." Well, he says, "How about if I just buy 3 coach class tickets?" So he lowers his cost. He gets more room. He gets 3 meals, and and he's refreshed when he gets to the other side. And the only thing that was stopping him from it was every seat is tied to a passport. So once they
Mhm.
figured out how to get that squared away, he wound up, not having to buy the first class ticket, paid a little bit more than the coach class ticket, and has bought 3 tickets over to London. And I found that was fascinating on how he was able to kind of futurize his own existence and see and to actually futurize the airline industry for his little part of that international trip. When you look at that and you see individuals trying to look to what the future of the business might be, in this case, it could be speaking, it could be speaker bureaus, it could be agents. What do you see is either coming down the pike for us, the industry, and maybe in the context of if you wave your Dominic wand and you look 10 years in the future, what would you be telling us today about what to expect?
That is a good question, because if you look at the fact that there's probably 75% of jobs that will be done in 10 years' time don't currently exist today, that's one heck of a magic ball that you're asking me to look into there. So, gosh, let me see if I've got my my time travel boots on. It still comes down to people. It still comes down to the interactions of people. You will always get sort of outliers. So I always think of the speaker industry along the lines of the travel industry, actually. I mean, how do travel agents still exist? You have Airbnb, you can go direct to the airlines, you can go direct to the car hire companies, you can go direct to the hotels. Yet travel agents still exist.
Yes.
And the reason for that is people like dealing with people. And that's always going to be the case. So as long as people want to book speakers, which I don't see finishing anytime soon, because with all the uncertainty and all the change that's going on, they're always going to want people to come along to give them insights into what's coming down the line, or how they can work harder, faster, more motivated, how they can be more engaged, all these sorts of things. So as long as people require that, which, as I say, I don't see going away even in 100 years' time, speakers are going to be wanted. And to find those speakers, yeah, sure, people can Google them. You can go on various websites and find speakers, and you can connect directly with a lot of speakers. That's absolutely, yes, you can do it. Where the
Yeah.
travel agents of the speaker industry come in, so where the bureaus and the agencies come in, is you can come to us with your brief, with a rough outline of what it is you want. And because of the experience we've got in that, then we can give you a good starting point. So just make things easier for you. And then obviously deal with all the logistics and the money flows and all those sorts of things that take place as well.
I love it. My final question, before I ask how if you want to be found, because you may not want to be found, is when we kind of behind the curtain of the bureaus, the agents that work that, and you kind of gave us a little bit of insight into the people relationships, and then doing some of the homework for that client relationship. Talk a little bit about how that relationship deepens for you from like bureau to bureau. What's the inner workings of what you, maybe the question is, how would you like to see the industry from the bureau's perspective change? What's something that you like to amplify from the bureau perspective?
It's the same as what we need to see within companies, within communities, and within countries. And that is increased empathy and increased working together towards a common goal. So with everything that we've got coming down to us over the next couple of decades in terms of technology developments, climate change, and everything else that's coming on, people are going to need to work together in order to well, in order to stay above water, in some cases,
Mm.
literally.
Right. Literally. I have found that that is such a powerful, profound answer. I found that across the board in every single thing, every group that I've been with, it is coming down to collaborations.
Mhm.
It's coming down to connections and relationships with that. I did my first collaborations with some speakers last year, and it was just fantastic. We're about to do another collaboration here on like our own little speaker showcase of Olympic, Paralympic athletes because now is a great time because we got the Olympic and Paralympic Games happening in closer to you than me in Paris this summer. Dating the show a little bit, but the collaboration space is I found is just really great because people can find the answers faster with the collaborations. So, is there anything that you would want to say that I've missed?
Anything to say that you've missed? Um, yeah, make sure you love someone and give someone a hug today.
I love that. Yes, I remember that from when we were over there in London during Wimbledon, and so that was great, and it was great to hear your comments on that, and to give you the hug over there. We had our meal together, so thank you. That was fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been talking with Dominic Eldred-Earl D on his profile there with the London Speakers Bureau. He's given some fantastic insights. I would try to read these back to you, but I forgot my glasses upstairs, and I can't even read my own handwriting anymore. That's my transformation, y'all. But if I can get some, increasing empathy for everyone, I think that was a great common thread from the start of the show, kind of book into the show for us on this one. So thank you so much for being on. Is there any way that we need to for if there's a client out there that's looking to book a speaker, how do we get in contact with the London Speakers Bureau or yourself?
Well, the easiest way to find myself is probably to look me up by name on LinkedIn. So that's Dominic, Dominic, and then the surname is Eldred-Earl, which is Eldred minus sign Earl. Fortunately, I'm unique enough with that name to be the only one out there. So you shall find me, and if you need to verify me by the profile picture, I've got my hat on in the snow.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for gracing us with your time this evening over there, this afternoon over here. And that is a wrap on today's show of the Amputate to Amplify podcast. I want to thank my guest Dominic for gracing us with his insights and inspiration and taking us on a real transformational journey by helping us amputate fear and amplify our life. Again, I'm your host, John Register, a professional speaker guiding us through the transformative journeys of some of the most inspiring leaders in the business events world. Remember, it's not just about facing challenges, it's about converting them into your greatest success. We again thank Inspired Communications International for sponsoring the show, working with business professionals who are ready to hurdle adversity, amputate fear, and embrace a new normal mindset to win the medals in their lives by delivering interactive keynote speeches, fireside chats, sales kickoff meetings, year-end celebrations, and much more. Continue your journey of transformation by following me, johnregister.com. All my social media handles will be there. And thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe, like, share this podcast with your besties and mosties, and keep amplifying your life. Until next time, vitam sperare, breathe life, and go forth, inspire your world. Bye for now, everybody.